Welcome to episode 9 of the Mile 62 podcast. I'm your host, Richard Elkins, coming to you from Austin, Texas. We cover all things ultra running in the southern United States. Today we got an exciting podcast. We're talking about Javelina Jundred, or Jundred, if I pronounce it correctly. It took place this last weekend. Where's it at? It's in Phoenix, Arizona, McDowell Regional Park. That's the Sonora Desert. Very popular race this year. In the 100 mile, there was about 730 participants, and around 330 in the 100K. And then they had a short 30K night race, which I believe may have had a few hundred. So we're talking about a big field of runners out in the McDowell Regional Park. It's about an hour outside of Phoenix, near Scottsdale, Fountain Hills area. Really nice venue. Started out by getting out there on Friday and headed out to the packet pickup. I was pretty excited. The plane was on time. Last year when I went out there, I arrived around 5 p.m., an hour before the expo closed. So this year I had plenty of time. Arrived out there around 3 o'clock, and they had Hoka and squirrel's nut butter, rabbit, and a couple stores, and saw a lot of famous people in running. Some people which I follow closely, like Jim Walmsley, was out at the Hoka booth. Didn't get to chat with him. I saw him and was looking at something, turned around, he was gone, so just missed him. But he was out at the Hoka booth for a while. Did get to chat with Eric Sensman at the Squirrel's Nut Butter booth. Real nice guy. He took a picture with me and my brother, and we talked to them for a while about some of their different products, and they give us some information on their new product, which is has beeswax. Like a candle wax for people which vegetarian. They don't want to use the beeswax. So there's two different types of products. I just use the beeswax. I'm not a vegetarian, but I was curious to know what the difference was. Also, the rabbit booth, they had a lot of clothes, some which I thought were pretty interesting. Almost bought a tank top, but didn't have my size. Ran into Latoya Shante. If you're not familiar with her, she is the famous, what she calls the running fat chef. So she's a little bit bigger. She's a black lady runner, which is pretty famous on Instagram, and has been on many talk shows like the Today Show. Real nice lady. My brother and I talked to her for about 30 minutes. She was in the 100-mile race, but I noticed after the results came out, it looks like she only did one loop. So she must have ran into some hard times. I do know she was going to run the New York Marathon this weekend, which would have been a really pretty fast turnaround after doing a 100-mile event. She's got a real tight schedule, running almost every month, and gets a lot of free entries into events. But it was nice talking with her. I also saw Katra Corbett. Just listened to a podcast with her recently. She's an ultra runner, been around for 10, 15 years. She just came out with a new book, From Addiction to Ultra Running. Saw her selling books, and then out on the course, I think it was around Loop 3, I passed her. Kind of interesting. I've never passed a famous runner before. Anyways, it was a good time. On race day, Saturday, we showed up on time, probably about an hour before the race started. But it's amazing how you can stay in a hotel nearby, and you get up at 3:45, and still you get out there only 45 minutes to an hour before it starts. It's just a long line of cars getting into the park. There are just so many runners. So I strongly advise, if you run Javelina Jundred, that you get out there leave several hours before the race. Otherwise, you're going to not be there at the start. Because once you do get out there, you got to wait in a line of cars to park, and then you're going to walk about a quarter mile to the start finish area. The race got started at 6 o'clock and 6:10. There was wave 1 and wave 2. My plan was to start in wave 2, but I got a little bit confused. I don't know why. I raced wave 2 last year, and I was standing there at the start. Wave 1 took off, and I just kind of followed the last runner and didn't realize that I started with wave 1. It was no big deal. So I started with wave 1. Equipment. I wore hat-wise. I wore a new hat that I had for a podcast, at Mile 62 podcast. My brother and I wore the same hat. I wore a Javelina Jundred buff. I wore some Oakley sunglasses. I wore my new Exoskin 3/4 shorts, which I just recently tested, and they turned out to work pretty well. I didn't have much chafing, and I only had to lube up a few times during the 29 hours I was out there. I was really happy with those. Just wore a standard shirt, and I wore my Nathan Vaporcar vest, and with the 2-liter pack. One thing I ran into, which I never run into before, is one of the zippers on the vest really chafed my underarm. I even lubed it, and it really chafed bad, and I'm not sure why. I did have a coat, a Solomon coat, which is really lightweight, between my pack and in my backpack. It made the vest a little bit tighter, maybe pulled it up a little bit. Not really sure why that happened. I have to investigate why, because I'm not going to deal with that again. If that's going to be a problem, I'll get a new vest, because it really chafed up my arm really bad. Of course, I've never been out in an ultra of 29 hours before, so it's about 5 or 6 hours longer than I've ever ran before. But that's something I need to look into. Wore some new Injinji calf socks that I just got in from the factory, and they worked really well. I didn't have any blisters the whole day. I was really happy with that, and I don't lube my feet. I've always had good luck with Injinji socks, and I don't use any powder or any lube, and very rare I get blisters. I wore my my Ultra Olympus, my new ones, 3.5. I also took my 3.0s with me just in case I needed them. On my last Ultra, I had one blister, and I've come to the conclusion that I had my shoes too loose. So this time around, I had my shoes pretty tight. There was no slippage at all inside the shoe, and had no blisters, so I was really happy with that. And then, of course, I used my Ultra Gators. I highly recommend using Gators out at McDowell Regional Park. There's a lot of fine sand and rocks. If you don't wear Gators out there, I can see you having issues. Because even with Gators, at the end of the race, I had some dirt on my feet. It just gets in your shoes anyways, but you definitely don't want the fine pebbles getting in there, otherwise you're going to have blisters. So if we talk a little bit about the course, there's 4 aid stations at Javelina Jundred. So if we go clockwise, you have Coyote Camp, which is about 4 miles in, and then you have a really long trek to Jackass Junction, which is probably the most famous aid station at Javelina. You know, it had the disco ball, and it's the biggest aid station other than headquarters. It's about 6.5 miles, and it's a very long 6.5 miles because it's a technical section of the course, and it's just going to take a long time, especially as the day goes on. Then after Jackass Junction, it's about 5 miles to Rattlesnake Ranch, and then after Rattlesnake Ranch, to get to Javelina headquarters, the main start finish, it's about 3.7 miles, actually 4.7 miles. So what you're looking at is half the course is 10 miles, the other half is 10 miles. So they're 20-mile loops. that's important to keep in mind, because as the day goes on, you really break it up into segments, and that's how I got through the race. If you think about the whole race, 100 miles, or you think about the whole loop, it really starts to wear on you mentally. So I just really think about it aid station to aid station. And being that I did it last year, I made it through 4 loops before DNF because of some lower back issues. I really know the course well. So that really helped me this year. I knew what to expect, and I also knew what to expect about the weather. You know, during the day it can get pretty hot. I had my arm sleeves on, and in case I wanted to use ice, but I think, you know, it got maybe into the high 80s, but it had a pretty good breeze. I never used ice all day, and as we get into later in the race, I'll explain how that helped me. And then at night, it got very cold, much colder than last year. I think last year probably in the 50s. This year it must have gotten into high 40s. Well, let's take it loop by loop. Loop 1, we started clockwise, so that meant that we were going to Coyote Camp. Started around 6:10, and I had my light on, but I got in such a conga line of people with their lights on, and the sun came up probably 30 minutes into the run. I never actually had to turn on my light, so that was kind of poor planning on my part. I shouldn't have taken my light, because I ended up having to carry it the whole loop. That first section going to Coyote Camp is kind of rolling hills, a lot of single track trails, and the last 2 miles before you get to Coyote Camp, there's a lot of sand, and rolling hills with sand, and that 4 miles is not very difficult. It's kind of comforting every time you get to that section, because it's an easy section. Then once you get to Coyote Camp, and you know, like I said, it's 4 miles, so it didn't take you very long. I stocked up on some gels. They had Goo was a big sponsor of the event this year, and I was already carrying some Goo blocks, and I also grabbed a couple bean wraps and ate some of them. This year my strategy was I was going to eat real food from the beginning, and I think it helped me. So I was alternating between gels, Goo blocks, and wraps, or whatever else I could get. So the first aid station came pretty quick. It was pretty easy. That next section to Jackass Junction, like I said, it's 6.5 miles, very technical section. It started to heat up some. A lot of people around me said, "Boy, it's getting hot," and I felt very comfortable. I think that's because I trained all summer in Texas heat. You know, most of the time I'm running at lunchtime when it's 100 degrees. So 80, 85 degrees, no humidity feels very comfortable to me. It's like spring weather. And made it to Jackass Junction, and kind of uneventful. Filled up, got running. The pack started to thin out some. I was running by myself for a while. On that first loop, as you pass Rattlesnake Ranch, there's an extra few miles that they add on to the first loop. So the first loop is always a little bit longer than the rest of the loops. And the extra few miles that they add on is all technical section. Once you get through that, you're really happy that you don't have to run that again. Got into headquarters, felt pretty good. You know, the heat is starting to get a little bit hotter. I had one bottle with me that I carried the whole race. I pretty much drank Gatorade the whole race. Very comfortable with Gatorade. They also had Roctane, and I had a little bit later in the race, which was caffeinated, but pretty much stuck with Gatorade the whole race in my bottle. And then my pack, I always just put water. Loop 2, you know, it's washing machine style race, so you come in clockwise. You went out clockwise, but when you go back out, you go counterclockwise. So you're running out the way you came in. So my first aid station was Rattlesnake Ranch, and then you got that 5 miles to Jackass Junction, Coyote Camp. This is the second loop. It's probably the hottest loop of the day. Felt pretty comfortable. No issues at all. Made it into the headquarters late in the day, and then got prepared for loop 3. I got both my lights. I was using a Ultra Aspire waist light and a Black Diamond headlamp. Ended up using my Ultra Aspire waist light most of the night. And then once I really got tired and I really needed a little bit more extra light, I would either use both of them or I'll just turn on my Black Diamond, because really towards the few hours before the sunrise, my Ultra Aspire batteries were really getting weak. I had extra batteries on me, but there was no need to change them. I could just use my headlamp. On loop 3, went out, and that's when I was really starting to feel a little bit challenged. My stomach I felt really hungry. I'd been hydrating and with water and Gatorade and trying to eat a little bit at every aid station, but I started to feel really hungry, and I realized that I wasn't taking in the 300 to 400 calories I needed per hour. It started to catch up with me. It was late in the day. I'd already been running more than 12 hours. So I grabbed a piece of pizza at headquarters, and I jogged off onto the second loop. I never eat at the aid stations. I just take my food and go. And I really struggled to eat that piece of pizza. It was kind of the situation where my body wanted the pizza, but my stomach wanted nothing to do with it. And I told myself, I said, you're going to eat this pizza or I'm going to grab another one at the next aid station. And just kind of started talking to my body, and basically was eating it like a baby. I mean, these small bites. I mean, my stomach really wanted me to throw it up, but I needed to get some nutrition in me. I was really hungry, and I made it through. It took me about 15 minutes to eat one piece of pizza. It was really ridiculous, but I did get it down, and a few miles later, I got to Coyote Camp and had a few more bean wraps. I grabbed 2 small bean wraps and quesadilla, and I was on my way again. I started to feel a little bit better, and I pounded out the 6.5 miles to Jackass Junction. It was already dark. Still feeling a little bit hungry, but I was feeling better. They were cooking broiling hamburgers there, and I grabbed one, had some cheese put on it, and just after I filled up my pack, I just headed out on the trail, and I was able to get that thing down pretty easy. It was really good, and it's something I really needed. It put a lot of calories in my body, and I think by the time I got to Rattlesnake Ranch, I really felt pretty good, and then I needed some coffee. They have the gels with the caffeine and the Roctane with the caffeine, but it just doesn't do much for me. I need real caffeine from coffee. And at Rattlesnake Ranch, they had coffee, and rather than, in the past, I would get like a small styrofoam cup of coffee, maybe add a piece of ice and kind of try to chug it as I was taking off, but I had my water bottle with me, which is a thermal water bottle, and I came up with a new idea which worked really well. I told them to put the coffee in my bottle, and after they kind of looked at me weird. And once they did it, I threw ice in there and I made it iced coffee and filled it up with water, and basically I did that twice, and it really helped during the night. But by the time I got to headquarters, which is about 4 miles later, I was wide awake. Loop 4. Got a little bit mental, started to get, mentally challenging. I knew that was the loop that I DNF'd last year. I kept every little niggle in my back. If I felt anything at all, I start playing mental games with me. But actually my back felt pretty good. My legs were tired, but they felt pretty good. My feet were swollen, but I think they were not too bad off. So I took off. It's dark. It's a dark loop. And got out of there, and just started grinding out the miles. Ate some grilled cheese and some peanut butter jelly sandwiches, and probably right before Jackass Junction, I saw my brother going the other way. I hadn't seen him all day. I was a little bit worried about him. Actually, he's doing the 100K. He was on on loop 3, his last loop, and I didn't even see him when I passed him, but he yelled out my name, and I saw him and chatted with him for a second, and then that made me feel a little bit better because I was kind of worried about him. I hadn't seen him all day. I should have passed him earlier. May have, but I didn't see him. But he was on his 3rd loop, and I was halfway through my 4th loop. I made it to Jackass Junction, and I loaded up. I think I got some more bean wraps and took off and headed through that technical section, 6.5 miles down to Coyote Camp, and it really started to get cold. There was a lot of valleys. We're talking valleys not very deep. I mean 20, 30 feet. You go down in the valley and the temperature can drop 20 degrees, and then you come up 10 feet and it's warm again. It's the most bizarre thing. They call it cold thermal pockets in the desert. It's one of the few areas that does that, and it's very strange how it works. I mean, literally, you run up a small hill, it's hot again. You run back down, it's 20 degrees colder, and I felt okay. But if I were to stay still and not running, I think I would get cold pretty quick. I had my light Solomon coat in my backpack, but I never took it out. I had it just in case. It's one of those things, if you don't take it, you'll be freezing. And if you do take it, you probably don't need it. But turns out, during the race, there were a lot of hypothermia cases, especially at headquarters. And it's a very spooky thing happened to me when I was running from Jackass Junction to Coyote Camp. I was probably halfway through it, and I was running down this hill, and I saw this guy sitting off to the side, and there was 1 or 2 people with him, and he was shaking violently. I see his hands shaking violently, and I asked if I could help, and they said no. He's got, they have coats on him and everything, and I just took off. He's being taken care of. It wasn't a mile later. I was coming down this. I went up a hill, came down a hill, and I see these sirens, like what you would see on an ambulance coming towards me. Well, I'm on a single track. The thing's 3 feet wide. There's no place for an ambulance to drive up that trail. I'm thinking, what is that? And it kept getting closer and closer to me, and of course it could see me because I had my headlamp on. Turns out it was a 4-wheeler with sirens on it, and it was a medical team going to get that guy that had the hypothermia. That's one nice thing I would say about the Javelina 100. It's just so well organized with medical staff, and it's got these radio team, covering the whole area, and it's marked with letters every mile. So if you run into a medical problem, you can call emergency number. There's signal almost everywhere. You can call a medical number and tell them which letter you're close to, and they can come get you. And then there's also medical staff on bicycles, and I saw some during the hot part of the day on foot. They do a real good job trying to protect everyone. But anyways, that kind of spooked me, because when he did pass me, I was on the side of the trail, and he just barely made it by me. I really don't like jumping in the brush like I did because, there's a lot of snakes out there. Knock on wood, I didn't see any snakes all day till the last lap. But there are a lot of rattlesnakes out there, so I don't like to get in the brush, but I definitely had to jump off to the side in the brush to let that 4-wheeler go by. And boy, he had a heck of a job on him. He was taking that 4-wheeler up a very technical trail, and there's so many loose rocks everywhere. He really needed to know what he was doing just to drive that thing. Anyways, I got into Coyote Camp, felt okay. Drank, loaded up on some Gatorade and stuff. Actually, I didn't have to fill my pack very much on loop 4. I skipped a few aid stations filling it up. I just filling up my bottle because I had it full of water. If I didn't need it, I didn't touch it because it saved me time. Because getting to the point in the race where every minute count, fighting the cutoff time, I wanted to really bank enough time so that when I got into the last loop, I would have 7 or 8 hours. Because, if you walk a loop, it's going to take you 6 hours hiking it. So I wanted, and I didn't plan on doing that, but you never know what happens. The end goal was to finish this race, whatever it took. And if I had to hike the last loop, I would have, but I need enough time to do that. And anyways, I made it in, and it was a little bit emotional for me. I was really happy to make it in on the 4th loop. Because I DNF'd last year at the end of the 4th loop. I went around, got my bracelet, which indicated I'm on my 5th and final loop, and took off. And I think about an hour into the loop, right before Coyote Camp, the sunrise came up, and I was running through some sand as the sunrise was coming up. I was probably a mile before Coyote Camp. And there were 3 or 4 other runners with me. They were from California, really nice folks. And we were chatting. I said, "Do you think we have enough time?" We had about 6.5 hours. And I said, "Do you think we're doing good on time? Can we make it?" And some of them had run the race before, and they said, "Sure, we could actually hike the first half and run hard on the second half." The second half of the race from Jackass Junction to Rattlesnake and then on to headquarters is pretty much downhill. A lot of single track. So they were saying the strategy, let's take it easy during this technical section. Let's hike it. Hike and then run the runnable sections. And then the second half of the race, let's just push hard the whole half. And my idea was not to do that. I wanted to try to run the whole loop. And my reasoning for that is I had problems last year. I kept thinking to myself, what if I get into the second half of the loop and my back started hurting? What if I ran into a snake and it stalled me? It happened to me at Possum Kingdom this year. I was 2 miles from the finish and ran into a 6-foot rattlesnake that was on the trail, and I couldn't pass. I lost 15 minutes until I figured out a way to pass him. You never know what might come up. So I didn't want to take any chance. I was going to finish this race. So I left my friends, and I pushed hard. I hiked some of the really technical sections, but the runnable sections I pushed really hard. And I think I gained 15 or 20 minutes by the time I got to Jackass Junction. It started to get a little bit hot, it was I went through the sun the whole day Saturday, and now I had the sun on Sunday again. So the direct sunlight started to really wear on me. However, I got into that second section, and I filled up with ice water, and I really pushed hard. That 5 miles to Rattlesnake Ranch, I ran as fast as I could run. And I just thinking to myself, you're going to finish this and you're not going to have to do it again. It's the home stretch, and I really felt happy. And however, I kept coming over the horizon. I was like, well, the Rattlesnake Ranch should be right there, and it never was there. And it's like several hills, and I thought it'd be there, and it's not there. And finally, on the horizon, I saw it. I got in there, just loaded up my bottle with water, and I passed a whole bunch of runners there too. I was like, I'm not even taking a chance. I'm not eating nothing. I'm not doing nothing. I just filled my bottle up with water. I said, I've got 4 miles. This thing is done. And I had like an hour and 20 minutes to run 4 miles, which is extremely doable. I mean, I could run double that distance, but I wasn't going to take any chance. I just tore off running, and strange enough, I passed a lot of runners on that segment too, and that were hiking. They're finishing the race hiking in. I got about 2 miles from the start finish. Sure enough, I see a snake crossing the trail. It's funny how that always happens to me right at the end of races. But it wasn't a rattlesnake. It was a really pretty, it looked like some sort of garter snake. He crossed the trail. I kept running. And I got in probably about a mile before I got to headquarters. and I could see headquarters coming up soon. And I ran across a lady that was holding her back. She was in a lot of pain. And I asked her, "Can I help you?" And she said, "My lower back is hurting so bad, it's making me lean forward." I was like, Shazam, man, that's exactly what happened to me last year that took me out of the race. And she says, "Anything I can do to make this go away?" And I said, "You just need to take salt. And I think your salt is too low. And when you get to headquarters, take some salt, take some pain reliever, and it should get back to normal." But it was really strange running across someone with the same case I had last year right before the finish. I got into the finish, and I saw my brother waiting there, and he snapped a picture. But I still had a quarter mile. I had to run the U back into the start finish, and I'll tell you what, I've done a lot of races, but it was very moving. I kind of wish I had my sunglasses. I had taken them off because I was worried I was getting burned with my glasses, so I wanted to kind of even out the sunburn on my face. I didn't wear sunglasses the last lap, but I came real close to crying. Boy, it's kind of emotional. I've never had so many people cheering for me at a race, but the whole way around the U through the headquarters, people were cheering. It was really cool, and a lot of people had already gone home because most of the runners had finished already. But it was really amazing that there were so many people still there right at towards the end of the race. It was about an hour from cutoff. Yeah, I ended up finishing 40 minutes before cutoff. I really had plenty of time, but I wasn't going to take any chance at all. I wanted to finish that race, and my strategy worked. I ended up passing a lot of people on the last loop and improving myself in the standings, and finished the race. I was excited about that because it's my first 100-miler. I previously had DNF'd that race. It also gives me a qualifier for Western States 100, so I can enter the Western States lottery now. And so it was a big day for me. And I was also happy my brother finished the 100K. That's the furthest he had run. It's his first 100K. Previously, he had only done 50K. So it was a real good day. The elites, in my last podcast, I had predicted that Patrick Reagan would win, and second place would be Tyler Green, and I was spot on. Patrick Reagan was running like a gazelle the whole race. It was really amazing. Even after the first lap, when he came back by me, I want to say it was probably 15. He already had a 15-minute, 20-minute lead on second place. And Tyler Green is a very good runner. After Tyler Green, there was a really big gap to the next runners. Casey Lichtig, the first female, she was running third place most of the day, and I think she ended up getting third place overall, which is really amazing because this is a golden ticket race. Because Patrick Reagan doesn't need a golden ticket, Casey Lichtig could actually got a male golden ticket because she would have passed to her. But as first place, as female, she gets a golden ticket, and the Camilla Mayfield got the second golden ticket. She was probably an hour, 2 hours behind Casey. I think she had some slight injuries, but she really gritted it out. I saw her pass one time. She was kind of limping, but really amazing. She made it through the race, and I think she still finished in like 18 hours. Sally McRae, which I had predicted would get second place, ended up in 12th place. And I was kind of surprised. There were a lot of elites that really skipped a race that they might have had a good chance of getting a golden ticket. The field wasn't that deep. But it was nice to see Patrick Reagan. It's 3 in a row. His third race. During my whole race, I had a mantra that I was talking to myself the whole race. I kept saying to myself, "You didn't come out here to hide, get running," and I really use that during the race a lot. Sometimes I start daydreaming, and I'd wake up to myself and I'd say, I see I'm on a runnable section and I'm just fast hiking it, and I'm like, no, this is bullshit. You need to run. So I really pushed myself all day long. And I haven't had a chance to take a look at my splits yet, but I know my lap 5 was probably my fastest lap, which is really bizarre, as beat up as I was. But I was using, kind of playing mental games on myself, My body would get tired, and I just kept telling myself, you didn't come out here to power hike, you get running. So if it wasn't a technical section, I really jogged and run. I got to put running in perspective. I mean, I'm not a fast runner, but I really was jogging or light running the whole race, and just still barely made it before cutoff. I think it's a tough race. People say that Javelina is very runnable, but I kind of disagree with them. It's rolling hills. There's not it's like 7,000 to 8,000 feet of elevation gain and descent, but it's got a lot of technical sections, and you're in direct sunlight all day long, and then at night it gets very cold. You're talking about 30 to 40 degree temperature swing. The coldness, the hypothermia cases really took out a lot of people. And even if they didn't get hypothermia, I think a lot of people dropped out. They're like, this is bullshit. This is really uncomfortable. I was looking at the numbers. I think it was around 50% DNF rate, maybe a little bit more than that. So it was about the same as the previous years. People are always talking about running ultras as 60 to 70% mental. I think that's kind of bullshit. I think it's really 70% physical. The reason I think that is because let's say you have a blister, you can push through that kind of pain. But if your legs are really tired and hard to pick up, it's not mental, it's physical. And that really is what really is challenging part, I believe, late in the race. So, putting in higher miles every week and really building up your mileage base, I really think is the way to go. And that's my plan. I plan to really build up my mileage going forward so that I'm more prepared, so that my legs get more and more prepared for the longer events, 100K and further. I see myself improving a lot, but I really need to get in more mileage. Running 40, 50 miles a week is not enough. I need to be up in the 70, 80 range, running every day and then have a long run on the weekend. So that's my plan. So my next race is Bandera 100K in January, and run that race twice before. My plan is to try to get under 17 hours, so it counts as a Western States qualifier, because I got my qualifier for 2020, but I need one for 2021. And if I can get under 17 hours, I'll get it for 2021. Also, I'd just like to improve. I really like that race. It's close to where I live, and I know the course well. Then after that, in February, I'm doing a 72-hour race. It's a one-lap loop, and I've always wanted to do a timed event, and this one's close to home as well, near Houston. It's out in Cat Springs, near the same place where they have Habanero 100. So I think that's going to be good fun, doing a 1 mile loop, and you meet a lot of folks, and I heard the culture is real great at those type of events, so I'm looking forward to that. That's enough about Javelina 100. Ultra news. Let's talk a little bit about ultra news and some running news from the past week. We had Big Backyard Ultra, which is in Belt Buckle, Tennessee. This has become a really big event. Backyard ultras are popping up everywhere. And basically what that is you have a 4.1 mile loop, and you need to run that every hour on the hour. And so if you run that loop and you get in 50 minutes, I mean, you got 10 minutes to rest, eat, sleep, do whatever you want. But at the top of the hour, you got to go out and run another 4.1 miles. So it's the last person standing. So these events go on and on and on. And this event in Tennessee, which is put on by Gary Cantrell, is the biggest one in the world, and even has golden ticket races to get into it. Gary's the same guy that puts on the Vol State 500 and the Barkley. He puts on probably the most extreme running events on the planet. this year was no different than previous years. Some real superstars showed up, past winners, top people from Europe, um, some real experienced female and males. They had like Maggie Gutterol and Amelia Boone, which is real famous from the obstacle racing circuit, and then Guillaume, which won the race in the past. This year, the race went for several days. 60 hours covering 250 miles. It's amazing. Maggie Gutterol battled out Will Hayward of Hong Kong. He's a professor from Hong Kong. Maggie works for Tailwind in Colorado. On the last lap, she won, and it's the first time a female has won the race. And it shows you, in these long distance running events, it's not uncommon for the females to win the events outright. Been a lot of examples of that. Like Courtney Dauwalter has won many events outright. So I think that's a very interesting phenomenon. People always say there's a big gap. Maybe there is at the very short distances, but when you get in these longer distances, there's not much difference at all between the men and the women. But this loop, this 4.166 mile loop, during the day they run on the trail, and at night they run on the road, so it's a little bit different. But very interesting race, pretty exciting. I was following it on Twitter, and I was real happy to see Maggie win. Trail running news, Western States is now sponsored by Hoka. Boy, Hoka has really been working to putting a lot of money into running events. They took over the series in Texas. They're sponsoring Bandera and a few other events in Texas, and now it looks like they were also a big sponsor at Javelina, and now they're the title sponsor at Western States for next year. That was announced on Twitter by Jim Walmsley. Running news, I think everyone is familiar with Eliud Kipchoge. Well, there's a lot of discussion about the shoes that he wore in the Breaking 2 event. Ryan Hall, it all got started when Ryan Hall went out on Instagram, posted a story talking about he believes that the shoes are a spring. Why are they a spring? Because they got 3 carbon plates in there with foam. So the shoe acts as a spring, and he believes that it's cheating. So a lot of other runners have been speaking up and really pushing the IAAF to do something about it. They believe it's unfair. Why is it unfair? Because the shoes aren't available to all runners. They're only available to Nike runners. So a lot of discussion about this, and a lot of arguing about this too. Some writer from Runner's World came out and was really attacking Ryan Hall, saying that, well, Sarah Hall, his wife, was using ASICS prototype during Berlin Marathon. Well, but of course, it didn't have this spring in the shoe, but you got to listen to Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall's the greatest American men's marathon runner of all time. He ran a 204 and change. Right now we get excited when American marathon men run a 209. People are ecstatic. Back many years ago we had people running 204. So this guy knows what he's talking about. And now he's a top coach. He's coaching his wife. And I think there's some substance to it. I think they should be available to everyone. If the shoes are available to everyone, if everyone can go out and spend $250, I think the Zoom Air, the Nike Percent you can buy now, they're like $250. This latest prototype that Kipchoge wore is not available. But if everybody can go out and buy them, I think it's fair. But for the elite runners, I think there needs to be some rule in place. And Ryan Hall highlighted this. These elite runners, they have shoe sponsors. So let's say if you're sponsored by ASICS, you can't put on a pair of Nike shoes even if you could buy them. So unless the brands give some exemption to their athletes, but why would they do that? Can you imagine if you're an ASICS athlete and you got caught with Nike's shoes on out at the marathon? People would take pictures and put it in the press, and you just trash your brand. So it's very difficult for the elite athletes. For the the common runners like myself, you know, we're trying to get a PR or do better for ourselves. It's no big deal. I think if we can buy the shoes or not, but age group medals and stuff like that. But for these pros, they're tied into a contract with Hoka or Asics or Adidas. They can't just go and put on a pair of Nikes for the Olympic trials. And that's why there's so much discussion and chatter right now. Olympic trials is in spring of next year, and there's going to be several ladies from wearing Nikes in the Olympic trials. The other athletes, which they can't go into this with a 3 to 6% performance disadvantage, and that's what they're saying it could be. They say it could be 1 to 2 to 3 minutes difference in times wearing these shoes or not. That's a lot. Imagine if you're on par with some of these people from Nike, but then you at the starting line, if you have a 1, 2, 3 minute disadvantage, that's a big deal. There's only 3 people going to the Olympics, so there's a lot of discussion on that, and I find it very interesting. But let's see how it turns out. Thank you for listening to episode 9. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Welcome to follow me on social media. I can be found on Instagram at runnerrwe or Twitter at runnerrwe. And on Strava, I have a Mile 62 running club. And you can also connect with me. My running page on Strava is just Richard, host Mile 62 podcast. You can find me through the Mile 62 running club. If you have any feedback or questions, please feel free to email me at runnerrwe@gmail.com. And I appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes and hit subscribe. It helps me get traction. I'm a new podcast, and it helps others see my podcast as more and more people listen and download my podcast. I appreciate it. Have a good running week.